Hi, I'm Thomas, and on behalf of my co-authors of the University of Applied Sciences Upper Austria and Microsoft Research, I would now like to present semi-automated analysis of collaborative interaction. Are we there yet? Many of the advances in HCI and CSCW are based mainly on audio-video recordings of interaction behavior. Some examples are findings drawn from territorial functioning, collaborative coupling, awareness in collaborative work, and multi-device collaboration. There are, however, two common issues. An enormous coding effort is necessary, and reliability is at stake. We feel there is an urgent need for methods, techniques, and technologies that help to reduce the amount of human effort involved in the process. So what are the main questions when analyzing audiovisual material? In one of our previous works about the descriptive domino framework for hybrid collaboration and coupling styles, we asked ourselves, for example, who is currently working together with whom, and how tightly or loosely coupled do they work? Or which of the coupling styles fits best? In another recent work, we shed some light on territoriality in hybrid collaboration in the tradition of Stacy Scott and her colleagues' 2004 paper titled Territoriality in Collaborative Tabletop Workspaces. In our paper, we were, for example, interested in which forms of territories participants interacted at each point in time. Now we have all these capable tools to study group behavior at our disposal, such as the domino framework or territoriality, but widespread use is often avoided due to the high efforts necessary for manual coding activities. Often a single 1-hour video of a user study can lead to several days of coding activities according to different estimates. Consequently, several problems may arise, such as fatigue, which may in turn lead to loss of information, or people may abstain from conducting larger scale studies in the first place. And finally, inter-rater inconsistencies may occur. In essence, most coding activities in this context consider collaborative settings with their entities and how relationships between those entities unfold over time. The entities can be either active, such as humans, intelligent user interfaces, or robots, or passive, such as objects like devices, tools, screens, artifacts, or territories. People as actors are mostly considered behaviorally by human coders through their implicit and explicit actions, which can be expressed through touching, looking at, pointing to, talking and gesturing, or moving around. These actions are of interest in collaborative settings mainly when conducted in relation to one another or to other, both active and passive entities. The core of our vision, therefore, is to use AI to recognize all related entities and establish meaningful relationships between them. For this, we introduce ACACIA, which stands for AI Chain for Augmented Collaborative Interaction Analysis. Now I'd like to explain our system based on the most relevant parts. First, our system will import video data. We suggest using Azure Kinect to record both RGB and depth information. Afterwards, in the pre-processing step, we are using external services such as Microsoft's cognitive services or their Project Tokyo to extract static entities like faces, people, and objects. These entities are then stored so that the pre-processing doesn't have to be executed multiple times, which saves costs and processing time. After that, the post-processing step is used to combine the collected information and process the data over time. Therefore, time-aware algorithms are used to perform the example, for example, the tracking of people. The post-processing step can be repeated as many times as you like, for example, after manually adding territories to be considered by the algorithms. Finally, the results will be visualized for manual verification, and it is possible to export the results and view them in a spreadsheet application. Now I'd like to show you how to use ACACIA. The first step is to add some profiles that allow the identification of the study participants. The profile images can be taken directly from the study material, and you can assign a name to each of them. Then you can see that the external services are available, which is indicated by a green color, and the analysis process is ready to start. We now select the video data, which is a platform for situated intelligence stream in our case. We then fast forward a little bit because the processing usually lasts up to several minutes. Now you can see the viewer, where it is possible to inspect the processing results and change visualizations on the fly. Different filters can be applied to view the information. By scrolling through the extracted images, taken in this example at 1 frame per second, which is however configurable, you can get a first impression of the processing results. Besides showing the detected entities, such as persons, faces, or objects, also relationships between entities are depicted, such as pointing or gaze. Furthermore, gaze can be visualized. Please note how gaze beams can stop inside the three-dimensional imagery when they intersect with another entity. In cases where we have no 3D information, for example for the young woman on the picture who was slightly outside the scope of our depth sensing camera in this case, the gaze beams cannot be pinned to a specific object, hence they do not end and potentially run through several objects. In the next step, it is possible to add or modify entities in our editor. This is also where you can draw certain territories into the images and specify for which period of time they were there. Here we could say that the TV was used as a group territory for shared interaction, and we are therefore interested in how long each of the participants interacted with it or focused on it. By simple drag and drop, a rectangle can be drawn to denote the areas in the image which should be considered as this or that territory. When 3D information is present underneath this area, this is also considered. We have now opened the viewer again and verified that the territories are there. In the next step, we see where the focus of the different persons currently is and with which confidence our system thinks this is the case. Here you can see that James is pointing to the TV, which we added as a group territory, while John is looking at James and Jeannie is looking at the TV. Finally, the data can be exported in a spreadsheet format with additional images. Again, a little bit of fast forwarding here. We receive a zip archive which contains an Excel file with several worksheets as well as images with some frequently used visualizations. In the spreadsheets, when we have a look at the frame from just before, we can see our manually added territories are now considered. This spreadsheet allows for more in-depth analysis of the detection results. Besides our testing during development of ACACIA, we conducted a more naturalistic small-scale evaluation with 5 participants who worked on several logic puzzle tasks to stimulate a realistic collaboration scenario. In room 1, there were 2 people and they were connected to 3 people in room 2 by an audio-visual link on 2 identical Surface Hub 2S devices. We recorded several sessions and then compared the results of ACACIA's automated analysis to human coders' assessment. We now present the results of the first stage of ACACIA, recognizing entities, before moving on to the second stage, establishing relationships between them. Concerning the recognition and identification of people, the main question is, which people are in the room and where are they? In the example here on the left, you can see that all co-located participants, Holly and Alice, are recognized and identified, and one of the 2 remotes is identified, Bob. The other one is facing away and not recognized. On the right, you can see that only one co-located is identified because the other is hidden, and both currently visible remotes, Clark and Bob, are identified. We systematically analyzed the representative 3.5-minute video segment to see how well recognizing people worked. The identification rate, which implies recognition of both in-room and remote persons, showed that overall 61.47% of the co-located and remote participants were successfully identified. So for around 60% of the participants, we know who they are and where they are by only using one camera. This result is not great, but it is in our impression a good starting point to improve from. The result can be explained by the fact that the participants were often hidden or facing away. Concerning object recognition, another example shows on the left that currently 3 objects have been recognized, 2 chairs in brown and 1 table in yellow. On the right, the portion of the Surface Hub screen showing the remote participants was additionally recognized as display. Overall, object recognition did not yield satisfactory results, which is why we suggest manually annotating regions of interest. This is usually a matter of a few minutes for stationary entities. We are now moving on to establishing relationships between the entities. To answer the question if a recognized person in one frame is the same as the one in another frame, we use a custom tracking algorithm. Basically, we assume that a person cannot move further than a certain threshold in a certain period of time. ACACIA can correctly track people up to 100% as long as their face was once visible and then the person is not completely hidden again, as ACACIA tries to bind identified faces to their body. In our tests, we mostly lost track of persons only when they were currently not visible. In an exemplary 3.5 minute portion of our recordings, the person in the foreground was recognized on all 211 frames, although she mostly faced away. However, the person in the background was recognized only in 44% of the images, as she was often completely hidden, as in the example on the right, where only one ghost arm is visible. Concerning gaze detection, we manually added 3 regions of interest, a mobile worksheet, and 2 stationary areas on the Surface Hub. You can see the visualization of automatically detected persons, estimated gaze path, and a list of possible gaze target areas. In this frame, Holly's, this is the person on the very left, gaze is estimated to target Alice, although she actually looks at the region remote, which is at least in the list of candidates. Meanwhile, Alice's gaze is estimated sufficiently well to pin it to the worksheet. In the example before, gaze beams were not terminated when they intersected with the 3D surroundings. Here on the left, Clark's, who is the person in the center, gaze can be located in the 3D space. In the center image, all 3 can be located, but not necessarily correctly. On the right, we see a typical example when participants are hidden or facing away. To summarize, both the recognition and identification of persons worked remarkably well as long as the camera had clear sight of the persons. Object identification proved to be too unspecific and volatile to be used for establishing connections between entities, which is why we use the manual annotation feature as a fallback, which however is usually possible within minutes. For such frames where persons were correctly identified and not facing away from the camera, gaze estimation also worked to some extent, between approximately 33% if face orientation was suboptimal and 60% for persons more often, but still not permanently facing the camera. So to answer our question, if we have already arrived at automating parts of the analysis process, judging from our systematic evaluation, we estimate that we are halfway there. The biggest remaining issue is how to achieve optimal camera perspectives. Firstly, the tracking of hidden persons is frequently lost, albeit all attempts to alleviate this by pinning faces, which are identified to bodies. Secondly, there is the dilemma that gaze estimation works best when persons are facing the camera, which in turn limits a single camera's capabilities of judging the target area the gaze lands at. We learned that an introduction of a second or maybe third camera is likely to improve the result by far. However, a synchronization mechanism still has to be developed to decide which camera's input should be considered based on estimates of the probability that an interface is correct or not. For example, a robust confidence rating. As always, you can find more information in the open access paper. For example, how we envision that ACACIA can assist the analysis of different models and frameworks like territoriality or collaborative coupling, but also considerations around privacy are discussed. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention.